The observation deck of Station Kepler 442 hummed with the quiet efficiency of 1,000 automated systems. Alexander Chin stood before the panoramic viewport, his reflection ghosting across the star-studded darkness beyond. At 42, he built the largest terraforming corporation in human space, commanded fleets of colony ships, and negotiated treaties with a dozen alien species. Yet tonight, exhausted from another round of merger talks, he found himself seeking solace in the one place on the station where he could be alone. Or so he thought. The sound was barely audible at first, a soft, broken whisper that seemed to drift through the ventilation system. Alexander frowned, his corporate instincts immediately alert. Security breaches were rare, but not impossible. He moved silently along the curved corridor, following the sound to a maintenance alcove tucked behind a service panel. There, curled into a space barely large enough for her small frame, sat a child. She wasn't human. That much was immediately clear. Her skin had a faint lavender tint that shifted like oil on water, and her eyes, three of them, arranged in a gentle triangle on her face, were squeezed shut as tears tracked down her cheeks. She couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 in human years, wearing a tattered jumpsuit that had seen better decades. "Gods, all I want is a dad," she whispered to the empty air, her voice carrying that peculiar dual-tone quality of the Centauri species. "Just one person who'd care if I disappeared. Is that too much?" Alexander's chest constricted. He knew he should call station security, report an unaccompanied minor, follow protocol. Instead, he found himself lowering himself to sit on the cold deck plating, just outside the alcove. "It's not too much," he said quietly. The girl's eyes snapped open, all three of them wide with terror. She pressed herself further into the alcove, her small body trembling. "Please don't send me back," she pleaded. "Please. I'll work. I'll clean. I'll do anything. Just not back to the processing center." Alexander held up his hands in what he hoped was a calming gesture. "I'm not going to send you anywhere. What's your name?" The girl studied him for a long moment, her three eyes blinking in sequence, a Centauri expression of uncertainty. "Kirsten," she finally said. "The humans at the refugee center gave me that name. Said my real name was too hard to pronounce." "Kirsten," Alexander repeated, letting the name settle. "I'm Alexander. Why don't you tell me why you're hiding in a maintenance alcove on a corporate station?" Slowly, haltingly, the story emerged. Kirsten was one of thousands of Centauri orphans displaced by the Andromeda conflict. Her parents had been scientists on a colony world that was caught in the crossfire between two warring factions. She'd been shuttled from one refugee processing center to another for 3 years, each more crowded and impersonal than the last. 2 weeks ago, she'd been transferred to Kepler 442, supposedly to await placement with a foster family. "But nobody wants us," Kirsten said, her voice hollow. "The human families all want human kids. The other species think we're bad luck because of the war. So we just sit in the center, waiting for nothing." "So you ran away," Alexander concluded. Kirsten nodded, her small fingers twisting the fabric of her jumpsuit. "I just wanted to see the stars, to feel like I was somewhere instead of nowhere. I found the service tunnels and just kept walking until I found this place." She looked up at him with those 3 luminous eyes. "Are you going to call the guards?" Alexander should have said yes. Should have followed every regulation in the book. Instead, he found himself thinking of his own childhood, not orphaned, but neglected by parents too focused on their own ambitions to notice their son. He'd sworn never to let a child feel as invisible as he once had. "How about we get you some actual food first," he said. "Then we'll figure out the rest." 3 hours later, Kirsten sat in Alexander's private quarters, methodically working through her third plate of synthesized protein and vegetables. Alexander had watched in silence as she ate, his mind racing through possibilities and complications. "The processing center probably has alerts out for you," he said finally. Kirsten's hand stilled, her 3 eyes fixed on her plate. "I know. And there are regulations about cross-species adoption, especially for someone in my position. Treaties, protocols. It could take months, maybe years, to navigate the legal framework." "I understand." Her voice was barely a whisper. Alexander leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Which is why we're going to do this properly. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to contact the best family law attorney in the sector. We're going to start the paperwork for emergency custody, and then formal adoption if you want that. It won't be quick, and it won't be easy, but you do that." Kirsten's 3 eyes were wide, shimmering with fresh tears. "For me? But you don't even know me." "No," Alexander agreed. "But I know what it's like to feel invisible, to think nobody would care if you disappeared." He smiled, a genuine expression that few of his corporate rivals would have recognized. "And I know that I have resources that most people don't. Seems foolish to have all this power and not use it for something that actually matters." Kirsten was silent for a long moment, her alien features unreadable. Then, slowly, she stood and crossed the distance between them. Without a word, she wrapped her thin arms around Alexander's shoulders in an awkward, desperate hug. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Alexander returned the embrace carefully, acutely aware of how fragile she felt. In that moment, surrounded by the trappings of his wealth and power, he realized that every merger, every contract, every business triumph he'd ever achieved paled in comparison to this. One scared child who'd asked the universe for a parent and somehow found him. "You're welcome, Kirsten," he said softly. "Now, how about we find you a proper bedroom? Tomorrow's going to be a long day, and we've got a lot of work ahead of us." As Kirsten pulled back, all 3 of her eyes bright with something that looked remarkably like hope, Alexander Chun made a silent promise. Whatever it took, whatever legal battles, political maneuvering, or corporate leverage was required, this child would never feel alone again. After all, humans hadn't earned their reputation in the galaxy by doing things the easy way to the indie.